Welcome to the Association 4.0 podcast, your association's no-fluff playbook to navigating and thriving in Industry 4.0 or the digital marketplace. Each week, we bring expert insights to help you and your association stay ahead of the curve.
Hello, my name is Sherry Budziak, and I am the host of the Association 4.0 podcast. I'm also the founder of .org Community and CEO of .org Source, a consultancy to associations. Today, my guest is Kim Robinson. Kim is the CEO of Frontline Co. With decades of association and nonprofit experience, the experts at Frontline Co. are laser focused on association success. They connect associations with cost-effective solutions that empower them to do their best, serve members and clients. So I'm so excited to have you here today on this program, and thanks for joining me, Kim.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you.
So we've been friends for a while, but tell our audience a little bit about yourself and your company.
Sure. Well, I had a career in state government out of college, and that was something that my degree's in political science. It was something that I really wanted to do, loved being in state government. But after about 18 to 20 years, I decided that I'd sort of done a lot of different things and enjoyed it all, but decided it was time to sort of start a new adventure. And I'd always wanted to start my own company. I didn't really know what that would be, but ultimately, just through a lot of the work I did in government, and I think there are a lot of parallels with government and the not-for-profit sector, I engaged with a few people who were looking for management help for their organizations. And it just struck me that that would be sort of a good fit for me and my experience. I started out just working for one or two associations, and then I started thinking about, the opportunities to expand that. And I didn't really there was no plan. It just sort of evolved over time. So at this point, I've been doing that about 22 years or so. We have 35 people on our team now, and we manage about 24 associations.
That's great. So Kim, we interviewed you for our second book back in 2020. And at that time, you had some highly insightful ideas. So I'm interested to hear if your thinking has shifted with developments over the last few years. And are there areas where you have changed your opinions or expanded your ideas about association management?
Well, I went back and reread that interview because I knew we were going to be talking today. It brought tears to my eyes. There were some really personal things that we talked about at the end of that interview, like my favorite meal. And I was talking about having had one sort of last meal with my parents before my mom got sick. And I had forgotten all about that. So, I loved going back and reading that whole article. But when I read that, it all seemed so innocent. Like, we really thought we knew what was going to happen to our future. Like, it was a plan. Like, we all knew what was going to happen. And it now just looks, it's a little bit sad to look back. Since then, of course, we had the whole pandemic and the aftermath of that we're all still living through. It was just so much change in such a short time. And I don't think we're ever going to get back to that. I don't think I fully, or anybody has been able to really put this all in a context yet that we all understand. What were all the impacts of that, and what are the lasting effects going to be? Whatever the reasons, I think everything's permanently altered. I don't think we all understand it yet, or what the long-term effects will be. I don't think that's unique to associations, right? That's like all of life. Change often brings opportunity. And as hard as it was, I think it has sort of changed my view. I think it's changed our members' views of what maybe they're looking for from their associations. And one thing that I'm really seeing, I don't think there's ever been more interest in networking and in-person connections. Obviously, we were all forced to live with the virtual environment throughout COVID, sort of the way business got done, the way we're able to continue on. But I think that may have been partly contributed to this. Now, nobody, in my experience, like I'm working with my clients, less and less interest. They still will do online things and education, but I just keep hearing more and more, we want to be in person. We want to see people. We want to network. I just think that's so fundamentally humans. And I don't think we necessarily appreciated it as much as we do now, having lost that for a number of years. At the same time, though, I feel like people's time, there's so many demands on all of our time. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of the paradox of craving these other activities and then having less and less time to participate in those activities. But that's a big issue that I'm seeing right now.
Yeah, I think you definitely summed it up. It was interesting because I always say my mom has all these insights about life and work, and she didn't work. And then when my dad retired, she decided that she started working part-time and she worked at a shop, but she hasn't had like a professional job like we've had. And she always just thinks this remote work and the lack of connection is just ruining society. She's like, it's just not healthy.
I don't disagree. You know where I really see it? So shifting from talking to my clients to talking to my team, I think where the work aspect has had the biggest impact that I've seen is on young workers. People that graduated during that time and were entering the workforce during that time, such a disadvantage for them. For those of us who had had a long career where you saw what an office was like and you saw what those interactions were like, maybe we had a framework. I think for those younger folks, I think they've really had to figure that out a little bit without structure and guidance. But we really saw that because we do hire a lot of younger folks. And I really saw that was where they struggled, was just not having that structure.
Yeah. So I do think there's an opportunity for associations to look at the value of creating those connections, if it's not necessarily in the office, but at their events and things like that. So
I agree.
Kim, on a slightly different topic, advocacy was a topic that you mentioned when we talked about the book and one of your areas of expertise. You were concerned at the time that many associations leaders don't understand the impact of government and politics on their business. Do you still feel that that's a concern?
I definitely think it's a concern. And I feel like, again, what I said then, I still think is true, but I feel like maybe now organizations are even more reluctant to engage. I think the fear of politics and government, even though those are supposed to be distinct things, we all know there's a lot of overlap, but it's just become so polarizing. It's hard to navigate for anybody. I think organizations don't want to alienate their members on either side of an issue. So I think you're more reluctant than ever to get involved. You know, if it's not in an organization's DNA to get out there and take positions and advocate for things, then they shouldn't do it. But I do think it's important. Government has such an impact on all of our members' lives and their businesses. And I feel like it's a potential oversight if you're not really understanding that and not being able to sort of engage and represent your members. I mean, they're definitely being impacted. And if you're not there to sort of speak up and represent them, sometimes there is nobody representing your members. So, I mean, it's always something that's at the forefront of our work and on my mind. Of course, I came out of government environment, but I think it's an important service that members need. Not every organization, but many organizations, that it's an important element of what they're doing for their members.
Yeah, sure. So Kim, working with a lot of different organizations and industries, what trends are you seeing across the association industry, and how do you think they'll impact future success?
Well, a couple of things. I mean, you talk about it a lot, and actually I hear you talk about it more than, most others that I see in the association world, but, digital transformation. I mean, AI, just so much rapid change, and the association world, again, not wildly different than the business world, but just trying to take advantage of those opportunities, understand, there's certainly some of those tools and platforms, there's a downside. And so just a lot of the rules about it aren't really written yet, some trial and error. But I think obviously it affords huge opportunity, but I think being able to understand the best use of those and still protect your members and privacy and things. I mean, it's a tricky course to navigate, but I think there's a lot of focus on that right now. I mean, we're using AI every day in some way. Personalization, I would say too. I think AI is driving the experience that your members have online. So Amazon is a great example. Obviously, nobody really does it better in terms of their platform. And that becomes the base level expectation of what an online interaction is going to look like. And of course, we all know Amazon has resources that most of us would not have access to, but your members, it seems that's what they're used to. They go online to order whatever they order on Amazon. It's super easy. Everything's stored. It's one click. And, that personalized experience, I think members increasingly want that, expect it. It's just become more and more part of their everyday lives. And I think all of us in the association world want to deliver that. But it's a lot harder than it looks, when you don't have Amazon resources. But I think that's what we're all working for.
Yeah, I think we've all been working towards that for a long time now, and using Amazon as the when Amazon was just a bookstore, we all were like, oh no, what are we going to do? But to your point, the expectations have changed, and we talk about, engaging younger generations and what does that look like? I mean, you've got a daughter, my daughters, they're in their 20s, and
Yeah.
You see, like they're ordering DoorDash and they're getting Ubers and they're on Amazon and, everything's coming to them, right? And it's just easy. They don't even really have to think about. So when associations are implementing whatever it is they're implementing, if we're making it hard for them to engage with us, they're not going to see the value, right? They're just not. They're going to just give up because they've lived in a totally different world than we've lived in. And we're obviously using those tools too, but if there's something that was a struggle, we're like, okay, we'll figure it out. They'll just move on, right?
Yes. Yes, exactly. Because somebody's doing it, right? Somebody's going to get them what they want. This is at this point ancient history, but what's interesting, I'm involved in a, sort of a big issue that's impacting an industry that I'm very involved in, and it's a national issue. And it's interesting to me, it has highlighted still a very important role that associations play. So, and again, this isn't news, but I think it's still a niche that associations are in a unique position to fill. Anybody can get information anywhere, right? 24/7, everybody's got access, but knowledge is different. And so understanding a big issue, you can go, the example I'm involved in now, you can go download white paper on this or an article on this or a ruling on this, but being able to put it in a context of how it's going to affect your business and your life, that's completely different. And that's still, I think, such a key role for associations, is being able to be that trusted resource. And again, it's not new, it's not digital, it's not AI, but it still requires human thought to take issues, put them in a context and communicate about them in a way that members are really going to understand, oh, this is why I need to pay attention to this. This is actually going to impact my business and my life. So I do think that's still such a critical role for associations.
So Kim, you had mentioned that you guys are using AI. Are you introducing AI to your clients, and how are you doing that?
Unless we're collaboratively like working on something, I would not say that we're using it internally in our work and producing content and images and things that we're using AI to help us develop, but I've not gotten to that point yet of introducing it to clients.
I was just curious. It's interesting. I'm seeing there's those organizations that are on one side of, we're not letting our members do anything using AI, and we're putting policies together to, we just worked with a board on facilitating a discussion about how AI is going to impact their industry. And then that kind of trickles down into the association operations and the discussion. So as you said, it's kind of like, we're kind of trailblazing here. And I'm just always kind of interested to hear where other people are at.
Well, I am fascinated. I want to keep having discussions about AI because, again, I think we're at the beginning of it still. It's like not a lot of rules, nobody even really understands all that it is. And perhaps my definition is broad, but I kind of feel like if you're using a search engine, it's AI driven. I saw a piece of legislation in Illinois that made me laugh the other day. And it was basically a requirement that if you were a business doing government contract, you would have to disclose in your company all your uses of AI. I'm like, how does that work? How about I'll just put everything. I'll just put everything when I fill out the form. I just again, I think it sort of speaks to kind of I think people are nervous about it. I don't think anybody understands all the elements, and nobody does, right? Because it's evolving very quickly. It's going to be another monumental shift, all that is going to come from this. And I don't think we all know. Well, I don't. You probably do. I don't know what all that is going to mean yet.
Kim, what do you think are the qualities that boards need today to be successful?
Thinking about my boards, the thing I value the most, I think that makes an association strong, is board members that are big picture thinkers, and that's not as easy to always come by as we would all like. Adaptability, being focused on the industry rather than individual interests. When I think about the most successful boards that I work with, it's those things. It's a real commitment to the industry that they're serving. It's wonderful to have people that are as focused on innovation and change as you are. And sometimes it requires the staff to sort of push and lead those discussions. But if you have board members that are, again, understanding the big picture of what they're trying to do and the vision for where they need to go, Those are things that I think lead to very strong partnerships between a staff and organization and have great outcomes. I mean, we would all say that, right? We all know what a good board member is, but I've been fortunate. I got to say, I've been fortunate that I think the majority of people that have wanted to serve on boards that I work with, they are there for the right reasons. And it doesn't really work very well if people are doing it because they want to put it on a resume or it was just their turn. We've all seen it.
Yeah. So you kind of mentioned about staff kind of sometimes having to lead, or, we talked a lot about, obviously society's changed and AI is changing things. So how do you support your clients to kind of manage change or deal with change?
Well, change is hard for a lot of people, right? And we've all had a lot of it. I think we've had our share of change in the last 4 or 5 years. I think trying to create, and again, this is easier said than done, but trying to create a culture where you're continually evaluating what you're doing and adapting when you see things that don't work quite right. Obviously, it's mostly staff, whether you're a standalone or you're an association management company, it's often staff that's going to sort of be, the canary in the coal mine. You're going to see it first, right? You're going to see first the impact of what you're doing and what's being successful and not successful. Board members are volunteers, of course, for the most part. So, we try not to ask our board members to do implementation work, unless there's a project we have to collaborate on. But we do really rely, as I was saying earlier, we really rely on their vision. Like they know their professions and their businesses better than the staff does. So it's often the case that we'll see something that is either an opportunity. Obviously, we talk to our peers and other associations. So sometimes you see things that are working elsewhere. So again, a staff role that you can bring forward opportunities. And like I said, you're also maybe going to be the first ones that are going to recognize that, oh, this program that we developed or this idea that we had or, whatever it is, it didn't work exactly as planned, but we see a way to shift course and improve or readdress it. So that's, to me, how change sort of comes about in organizations. It could certainly be the case that your members or your, especially board members, or if you have a very dynamic committee chair, they definitely bring things about too, right? And then it's sort of staff's job to figure out a way to get it done.
Yeah. So speaking of change, I've been asking everybody this on my podcasts lately. Do you see the role of associations in society changing, and do you see them taking on different or new kinds of responsibilities? Or I guess the question is, are you seeing associations expanding, contracting, or need to be reshaped? I guess, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's interesting. Obviously, associations have been around a long time. I think the idea of why they began in the first place is more important than ever, that people wanted the connection with other like-minded people. I still see and even maybe now a stronger desire for that. In the old days, that used to require a structure that associations provided. But what I am starting to think that I see is we want to keep the connection part, but we're a lot less interested in structure. And I do think that's partly due to, younger folks coming up. They just don't have the same reliance and interest in, oh, every board meeting or committee meeting has to have minutes and we have to have an agenda. They want to connect and do things and make the best use of their time, but they don't necessarily value some of those sort of long-standing structures. So, I'm actually talking to a client about this right now. It's like, how do we preserve what does work and where I think the role has been and could be for associations and reduce those other barriers? Mm-hmm. And I think we just might need to think about re-examining how we're fostering those connections.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Kim, I really appreciate your time, and this was such a great discussion. Any other kind of final thoughts before I let you go today?
No, I just want to say again, I always love these discussions, appreciate the opportunity to be here, and look forward to more discussions to come.
That's great. So thanks to our listeners, and we hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you want to meet leaders like Kim, you might want to consider joining .org community, where we continue these types of discussions on a regular basis. And Kim, I will see you next week on our circle group that you lead for us. And then I'll see you at the collab in a couple weeks.
Yes, looking forward to it all.
All right, appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and discovered tips and information that will add value to your leadership style and your association. .org Source specializes in positioning teams for success with solutions for technology, strategy, and marketing. Please contact us at info@orgsource.com or visit www.orgsource.com to find out how to keep your organization on track to Association 4.0.